In a universe full of ideas, we draw lightness from the dark to a place where opposites attract. Right meets left, positive touches negative, sparking an explosion of truth. Because politics makes strange bedfellows.
About your heroes. I want to hear your story and who your heroes were when you were an 8-year-old kid broadcasting illegally in your basement. Who did you want to be when you grew up, Rick Walker?
I didn't know that I would do this. I just stumbled into it, like everything through my life was media related. Never really thought about doing this. I just always gravitated toward things that were media related. So I bugged my parents nonstop for about a year until finally they got me a Super 8mm movie camera. Film, right?
Mm-hmm, I remember those.
Yeah. So they bought it from my uncle used, and so I started to make films and school newspapers, things like that. So just everything was media related. I just never really thought about it, and I've just always been involved. So that's how I got to where I'm at.
You're a natural, kid. That's what I call a natural.
I thought too hard about it because when I was, I think every young person goes through this, and so maybe this is something that will help someone if they're young. We probably don't have anybody under about the age of 90 watching, but because we're so old. Well, at least I am. I'll speak for myself. But I went searching for something to do as a career, and I thought, well, maybe I'll be a cop. No, maybe I'll be. I actually got the literature from the Toronto Police Service, and I'm like reading through it, and what does it pay, and what do you have to do, what education do you, all this stuff, right? I went to. I thought, well, maybe I'll be an actor. So I went for auditions, and I was accepted at 2 different schools to become an actor.
Really?
And then I thought, that's probably a really bad idea. I'll probably end up starving to death.
Very bad idea.
Yeah, it's probably a really bad idea. So even though I was accepted, I didn't do that, but I'd also applied to go to school for journalism. And I was accepted for that. And I said, I'll do that. And that was whoa, boy. You want to talk about starving to death?
Yeah. Well, here we are.
I made 11 cents yesterday. I made 11 cents.
Exactly.
Yeah, but I was very fortunate. Much more fortunate than most of the people who went through my program. I did study at university as well, economics. And I have, some political science education, and but I went to Fanshawe College to study broadcast journalism. Very, very tough program. We started out with about 45 people. Within the first week, half of the class was gone. Within the first week.
Why is
this
that?
was hands-on, right? So you had to be able to do it. The first assignment was what they called the man on the street interviews. Mm-hmm. You just had to go, ask the public a question, news related, come back and cut together like a 2-minute string of people's answers for radio. And half the class couldn't do it because they couldn't get up enough courage to go out and just talk to people.
Yeah, that's right. It's not easy. You got to be a little bit of an extrovert.
Yeah, and I think
and you're a natural kid. Yeah, you're a natural.
I think at the end of everything, there were maybe 5 of us that actually graduated and got diplomas.
Interesting.
Yeah, it was that hard. And if you missed even, say 2 days out of the school year, you were effed. you were effed. Like you could not catch up because of the way the whole program was structured. It was, you know, it wasn't like an elite Ivy League school, but man, they wanted the standards at this place to be high. And so we in Canada, there was Carleton University, which was a very good journalism school at the time, still is. Ryerson out of Toronto, you know, they've produced a lot of really prominent, well-known journalists over the years, especially in broadcast circles. And so we were, you know, the people running our program wanted to be in that league, and it was really, really a tough program. It was.
That's good though. That's what
Oh, yeah.
makes you a good journalist.
Yeah,
It's got to be tough.
yeah. And so a lot of very good broadcast journalists came out of that school for sure. Yeah.
Sounds like a great school. Well, you know what's interesting, Rick, too, when you look at journalism today, I think one of the reasons that it sucks is, you know, most of the young journalists coming into our industry are all elites. They're the children of elites. They went to the Ivy League schools.
Yep.
They, you know, you can't get into broadcasting now
Yeah.
without a degree. And,
Yep.
you know, most of the people that we just watched and that we're paying tribute to tonight didn't go to fancy colleges. Some of them didn't go to college at all.
That's
But
right.
if they did, they went to little small town, you know, tiny colleges and universities where they
Yes.
got a damn good, solid training. And it turned, you know, the journalists used to be working class. They were reporting for the people whom they were a part of. They were a part of the working class, the people bringing the people's news to the people. But now it's the elites bringing the elites' news to the great unwashed masses.
Yes.
Very different now.
Very different. That is very true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm glad I went to the University of Oklahoma. I'm proud of it. You know, it's a great
Yep.
school, but it's not Harvard. It's
I'm
not even
glad-
UT.
Yeah, I'm glad I didn't go to Ryerson. I'm glad I didn't go to Carleton. I'm glad I didn't go to one of those Ivy League schools for that. You know, I went to Western to study economics, but you know, I got a great education, and I learned from people who were hands-on. I mean, I couldn't have asked for a better education. I really couldn't have.
You just reminded me of something. Speaking of born to do it and working on the school newspaper, when I was in seventh or eighth grade, I was working on my middle school newspaper. Even then, I had this hankering to write, and I was interested in news. And you know what my very first story was that I ever covered as a journalist at the age of 12? I think I was 12 years old. Was this.
Videotape of an incident that took place less than 15 minutes ago at the Washington Hilton Hotel when shots were fired at President Reagan. Here you see the president coming out now. You just have to watch. I don't know whether we can hear this or not. There it is. Shots. God. These are the agents immediately diving after the assailant. There are 2 or 3 people down on the ground. We understand that one Secret Service agent, one, it may be another Washington policeman who was injured. I can't hear the sound on this. Can't hear the sound. We understand also that James Brady, the White House press secretary, was among those injured. The president had just come out of the entrance. Yes, there is. That looks like Jim Brady. All this happened about 2:30 this afternoon as the president was coming out after talking to the AFL-CIO. This is the first time that any of us has seen any of this tape. The president, let me repeat once again, the president was immediately pushed into his car, as the agents are trained to do in a situation of this kind, and the car immediately took off back to the White House. You can see the situation. This, I believe this is the, they're grabbing the assailant. It seems to me here that they've got the, they're certainly not trying to lend any medical assistance to anybody. Our reporter, Sam Donaldson, said he believed he was a young white male. You can see the agent there with the Uzi Israeli submachine gun. And there are 1, 2, 3 persons on the ground. Brady, Jim Brady, the White House press secretary, who is always, of course, very close to the president, is the one in the foreground here, closest to you, closest to the camera. There's another man behind, just beyond him. Here they're taking away, yes, he appears to be blonde hair or light-haired. We can get a look at him or not. But he is seized as the suspect. Agents immediately, well, they're going to take him away to another car, apparently. Here come the ambulances. How fast they react. This is not very far from the White House. It is just off Connecticut Avenue. There's a driveway going down to the entrance of the hotel. We can still see. This is not live. Now, we understand this. Please understand this. This is a videotape of this incident that took place just a short while ago. Looked to me like Jim Brady was moving there. All right, we don't know the condition of any of these people. It appears, though, that he was struck in the head. Yes, it appears that he was struck in the head. I'm sorry, I don't hear any of the shouting or anything that might be going on. I don't know whether you can either. But I just want to keep reminding you that while these shots were obviously aimed at the president, Mr. Reagan was not hit. That's the end of the videotape. That is the first time any of us have seen that, so it was not edited or put together in as neat a way as it might be. It's true, but we did have reports from the hospital earlier and from the White House that he had passed away. We know that he was in very critical condition. Let's get it nailed down, somebody. Let's find out. I don't apologize for my display of anger. It was anger, and it was anger directed more at myself than at anybody else, certainly, because I really regretted that I had not insisted on further corroboration.
He was not someone you could push around when he felt that he was wronged or that the situation was not appropriate or and somehow out of step. He was the first to express it as well. And that's a valuable asset, I think, in journalism. And Frank encompassed all of those things. He was, at the core, a thoroughly professional reporter.
Frank also had a real emotional connection with the news. He felt it. And sometimes he let that feeling show. That's not always a bad idea.
Frank has always been a get-up fighter. Get knocked down, get up. And I guess I really expected him to get up. And this time, when he didn't get up, to say that I was shocked would be an understatement.
Frank was a genuine journalist. He didn't want to get in the way of the news. He wanted to report it to people, and it never occurred to him to think what he might look like or how he was lit or whether his mic made him sound good or bad. It's one of the reasons he was such a pure journalist and one of the reasons he was such an inspiration to all of us here at ABC News.
But perhaps the most impressive tribute was paid to Frank Reynolds during his lifetime by his critics. He always took the news so seriously, they said.
Jeff
He acted as if the weight of the world was on his shoulders, they said. Well, maybe Frank Reynolds knew what some others in this medium have forgotten or never knew at all, that matters of life and death, war and peace, wealth and poverty are indeed serious, and so is the power and the responsibility carried by this medium. Television is the way we learn about the world now, and Frank Reynolds helped us learn about that world fairly, accurately, and responsibly. This is Jeff Greenfield for Nightline in New York.
That was the day that Frank Reynolds died. I loved Frank Reynolds. He also passed away 40 years ago this summer. It's amazing. I grew up watching him, and I will never forget his coverage. I bet you won't either, of the day that there was the assassination attempt on President Reagan. That was my first story as a journalist. Taught me a lot. I learned a lot from Frank Reynolds, and what he taught me that day was, get the story straight, damn it. You know what he used to say? It was like his mantra: accurate, responsible, meaningful. Those three words say so much about what we as journalists ought to aspire to. We want to be accurate, we want to be responsible, and we don't want to bring you trash that doesn't have any real meaning in the big picture. It has to be meaningful. Do you remember? I bet you remember that day, the day Reagan was shot. How old were you?
Wait, I don't know what year that was. That was
81.
81. So
2 months after he was sworn in. Happened right away.
how old would I be? I'd be
If you don't want to tell, that's okay.
15, 14. Yeah.
It happened right after school.
16. Yeah.
Just come home from school and saw it on TV.
Probably about 15, maybe 16. I don't know. Something like that.
Did you watch it live as it unfolded? We were in continuous coverage that day, too. Because everyone thought, Reagan might die given his age. And we didn't know how badly he was wounded. And the first reports, when Frank Reynolds did the first bulletin, originally we were told that President Reagan was not hit. We saw that Jim Brady was hit. We saw the cop and the Secret Service guys on the ground. But, they whisked Reagan away and got him in the car. And we were told at first he wasn't hit. They didn't know he was hit until he started bleeding profusely in the back seat of the car. And then they rushed him to the hospital. But we were getting conflicting reports from the White House. And that's why Frank Reynolds lost his temper. There's that rare moment of Reynolds blowing his top because he was so frustrated that nobody could seem to get the damn story right.
Yeah, I would have been 16 years old. Yep.
Yeah. Well, you probably had bigger things on your mind at 16.
Yep.
Like
things.
getting your driver's license and women.
That's pretty accurate. Very insightful.
Yeah, I did too.
I'm not as complex as I thought.
This has been a Maverick Multimedia production.